As a lot of you know, I'm an early riser. I usually get up around 5. And at 5:30, if you pay attention, sometimes magic happens. I'm looking out over the Silicon Valley, and there's that layer of fog down there, and nobody knows what's going on. So that job we did last week, the big oak tree that was dead, I saved a couple of pieces of it, took it to the mill, and sliced it up. There's a bit of spalting going on, which is the first stage of decay, but it's pretty amazing looking wood. Unfortunately, live oak is really hard to dry. I also run into a lot of interesting situations. I've got this old woman whose husband was a woodworker and he passed away, and I knew the guy pretty well. And she called me up and said, "I'm clearing out the barn. Come and get it. Anything you want is yours." So I found a ton of wood, and a lot of it I didn't even know what it was. So I pulled this one board out, and I cut about 3 feet of it off, and I ran it through the planer. Any guesses? What do you think? What kind of wood do you think this is? So from this perspective, it was really hard to tell. It could have been oak, it could have been anything else, but I put a coat of oil on it, and I think this is eastern walnut. Yeah, life is pretty good when you get to pick fruit from your customers' yards. I see lots of interesting things during my day. I'm always paying attention. I'm always looking up at the trees. I see the birds. I see the things that most people don't pay attention to. And I get to reap the fruit. I'm on these estate properties, and most of my clients don't harvest their fruit. Oh, this really bothers me. Plastic lawns. I can go on ad nauseum for plastic lawns. They put redwoods in there. Oh, interesting things happen to me. And I was on this job, and this customer has a feud going on with the neighbor. The neighbor actually punched her in the face. And the neighbor's wife, for some reason, put up these strange little Halloween ghoulies staring back at them through the fence. And I asked her about it. She said, "Oh, they're just crazy." I was afraid to talk to the neighbor. I don't know what's going on over there. But it was kind of creepy. Tree work is tough. If you're not prepared to get cut up and scratched, not a good line of work for you. But I do need to remember to put my sleeves up. The lessons we learn. But I get to work on some pretty amazing properties. A lot of big estate properties. I work for a lot of high-end Silicon Valley executives, and a lot of interesting people with a lot of absolutely gorgeous properties. So I'm up in the bucket. We're working on this one live oak that's been declining for a long time, and I thought I'd give you an overview. This is kind of what it looks like in the area where we do a lot of our jobs up in the Los Gatos, Saratoga Hills, Montecito, and from the bucket, if you do a quick peruse, you can see that there's all these just magnificent estate properties. I mean, there's not a single home up here worth less than $5 million. All these hillside properties, $10, $20 million. And most of these people are going off to work all day long, and I get to enjoy their property. This is that live oak that we're working on, and sadly, it was full of dead. So it looks like I'm stubbing it back, but all I'm doing is cutting back the dieback on the ends of this half of the tree. The left half is not looking too bad, so we're doing the best we can to preserve it. But he asked me, "What can I do?" And I said, "Water. The tree needs water." Oh, this is cool. This is a fairly new tool that I bought. It's called an ART swivel for my flip line. I call it a flip line. A lot of people call it a lanyard, but I'm so old school. That's what we all used to call them in the old days. There is not a cable in it. It's just it's almost like a secondary rope. But having that adjustable ART device has proved to be so handy. I absolutely love it. I cannot recommend it enough, and I don't recommend tools that often. I live in a part of California where
There was a lot of innovations that took place in tree care a long, long time ago. There was many big companies that were established in the Bay Area, and a lot of the tree work that was performed on these trees occurred in part because there was a lot of money here. Here's a big old oak tree, and if you look up here, let's see if I can zoom in on it, there is a rod that goes from one side of this crotch to the other. So I'm looking at this crotch trying to see if there's any evidence of splitting or cracking or anything that would make me think that there was a justification for this rod. There's a big old wound here and a big old wound here and another one on this side. Can't even see that one, but I'm guessing it's possibly a problem. Did this split a long time ago? And was this rod a through rod? It was likely a through rod. And there's probably some nuts buried in here and on there, but it looks quite old. There you go. You can see that there's quite a bit of cambium growth going up around this through rod, so that is quite old. Now it's quite clear that the power company has been topping and disrupting the shape of this tree for a long time, and the consequences of this is it's very much out of balance on this side. And boy, if that power company didn't disrupt this tree when they did, this would just be a beautiful, nicely shaped big oak tree. But the consequences of needing electricity within our trees, the trees always lose. So this is today's job, just down the street from that oak I just showed you. We've got a property with a lot of oak trees on it. I've been working on this property for a long time. We go to a wide angle lens here so I can get most of this tree in here. This thing is huge and it hangs right over the house. So all we're really doing to this tree is taking out the dead wood, the crossovers, looking for heavy branches, anything that might possibly be a problem. That's kind of interesting. That one's stubbed off there. I think the end of it died. That top piece up there looks like it's mostly dead.
So one thing I really like to talk about is learning how to read a tree. Looking at the trees and seeing what happened in the past. If you look closely at the base of this tree, you can see some slash marks. What caused that? Was that some kid with a hatchet a long time ago? I don't know, possibly. I can see evidence of some scarring. There's a longitudinal crack. Some of the cracks that you see in the bark are actually from the expansion, and the bark splits naturally, and that causes the deep fissures in a tree. But I also see a lot of old spur marks, and some of them are quite deep. You know, once you use spurs on a tree, it's a permanent injury. It's not something that the tree is going to just absorb and have it go away. So anything that you do to the bark, to the trunk, including hitting it with firewood coming down or smacking it with limbs or any kind of physical damage, it's permanent. This property has some really magnificent trees. This is a huge redwood tree, and I spotted this little white thing way up at the top. So I got out my new iPhone 13 with its telephoto lens to see what it was. It turns out to be a balloon. I think it's going to live up there for years. They've got a little creek that goes down here, and some of the redwoods that are in the creek get the appropriate amount of water. So they're looking really beautiful. And the alternatives are the redwood trees that are not getting the water, and they look terrible. There's also a lot of old trees that were removed a long time ago, so I'm seeing a few stumps. There's some California native sycamores, or plane trees. I got to be careful what I say. We call plane trees sycamores here in the States. And at the base of one of these trees, I spotted this big pile of fresh dirt. And I had to go over there and investigate. I love being able to look at people's properties. They never see any of this stuff because they hardly ever get out of the house. What critter is living underneath that root base? What is it? Something big. That's a lot of dirt. And look at this old, I'm going to call them sycamores. Look at this old monster leaning sycamore. Here's another one. Look at the lean on this. These things often grow kind of convoluted and strange and off at odd angles. And I'm always amazed that these things can continue to grow like that, and they support themselves with all that weight. There's that little maple tree. Maybe that's holding it up. I don't think so. But it's some just magnificent old trees on this property. And the people that live here, they never go down here. They never go in the creek. They never go walking around their property. They've lived there for a long time. These people live in a very interesting glass house. Lots and lots and lots of great big glass. So they have a beautiful observation of the outdoors. Maybe you remember this from a past job. I did that a few months ago. I cut a slab out of a deodar cedar that had died. Here is yet another giant. This is called the Platanus racemosa, and different from the Platanus acerfolia, which is the London plane. These are the native sycamores. This guy has a big rotten base. And look at the size of this thing. That's easily 4, maybe 5 feet across at the base and towers up 100 feet or so. And I was looking at it thinking, wow, if this thing falls down, which way is it going to go? And I think it's going to fall away from the house. Being an arborist, a consulting arborist, a lot of my clients ask me things like, if that tree falls down, where is it going to land? Or how safe is my tree? And a lot of times it's just an educated guess. Look at this. This thing is leaning. I don't know. That would be a real pain to climb that, without spurs. I don't, say spurs are the way to go, but with that angle out there, I'd have to shoot a throw ball way up there and climb the rope. There's a big dead piece that's hanging on there. Been there for a long time, and next to it is another big live sycamore, huge one. They probably have 25 or 30 really significant trees on this property. And there's a little creek that goes down here, so I love walking along creeks. There's so much to find. And there's still some water in here, which is refreshing. Unfortunately, there aren't any fish in there, and it's a very slow-moving creek, but it's still active, and it's taking care of all these trees. Look at that. It's just I find so much enjoyment just walking around, looking at people's properties. I get paid to go look at trees and help people make decisions. This is kind of cool. Look at that brickwork there. A long time ago, before my client bought the property, somebody built, I guess, a swimming hole. There's a little better view of it. There's still some of the brick on there, but a lot of it was destroyed. Years ago, about 30 years ago, this client actually had stairs going down that overlooked this, and there was a deck down over the creek, but the water company made him take it away. All right, here's a quiz point. What kind of plant is this? All right, stinging nettle. That's one of the things you got to be careful of when you're walking along creeks, or just about anywhere. So this guy's got some huge trees, and a lot of them are towering over his house. And what's kind of interesting is he's got a big flat top roof up here. This tree still needs to be pruned. It's growing out of his atrium. And the trees that are in the back here, let's see, is that one done? It looks pretty good. I've been working on this guy's property for, gosh, 30 years or more. And we recently pruned out some pretty good sized trees. There's some dead stuff off in the back there. Let's look at this oak here. This is in the back. This old wound has me worried. It's quite decayed. And look at the size of this tree. And you will see that this tree doesn't go over the house, but if it breaks, it's going to hit the house. So at what point do I make the decision to advise him to get rid of it? This tree is grown right next to the house, and it's actually pushing on the roof. It's growing out of a deck, which is kind of hard because I can't even get down there and make a clear observation of the base of the tree, which is so important. The deck has kept me from inspecting the tree carefully. So I've got all these other trees that I've got to work on the property. And today we're just working on that one big one out by the parking area. There's a closer look at that. This is a valley oak coming through the deck. It's a deciduous oak tree. Most of the oaks on the property are live oaks, and they're evergreen. They stay green all year round. But these people love living in the woods here, and they've lived here for a long, long time without too many problems. I think this is a lunchtime get down out of the tree moment here. Or he's up over there. I did a lot of work with a bucket, but I also got out and climbed my portion of the tree. This tree was so big it was an all-day job for the two of us, and it ended up looking pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. Jorge has been with me 26 years. We are a good team. Okay, this is interesting. Lots of squirrel damage. Squirrels chewing on the bark. Today I got into a rat's nest and I saw lots of rat damage on the trees. The rats were also chewing on the bark. So I'm up here doing some inspecting, especially, look at this. This old stub cut. A long time ago this branch broke, and I think 30 years ago I cleaned this up to a stub, but it didn't hold out. It's rotten. So what do? Do I stub it back further and let it re-sprout out? Well, it's not dangerous enough yet, and it's not over the house, so I chose to leave it for now, but I pointed it out to the property owner. And here we're getting close to being done on this tree. It was a fun job. I love climbing the really big trees and the real big wide-spreading oaks where you can get a top tie-in and you come down and you can just about fly through the tree. Always dreamed of being in the circus, and I guess I am somewhat of a tree acrobat. Hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this. This was my workload from this last week. Please subscribe and click the like button if you can. Thanks.